Hello, and welcome to Thriving in Higher Education. My name is Yvette Myrick, Dr. A. Yvette Myrick, but please just call me Yvette.
And my name is Dr. Estelle Young, but please just call me Estelle.
So, Steph, I'm really excited today to talk about our topic on self care because 2020 has been a very challenging year for a lot of people. Between the pandemic, um, everything else going on in the world, elections and politics, and just so much happening, COVID 19. With all that going on, we do need to exercise self care to get through some things. And how appropriate that we have a whole chapter in our book on self care. As a matter of fact, chapter number 7 is on self care, and we offer some great tips. But today we're just going to talk about a few tips. We're not going to talk about all the tips. We please refer to our book on all the tips that we have for self care, and we have a spotlight people to talk about self care. But I just want to focus on one or two of the tips, and then share our own personal experience and how we relate to our own self care and what we're doing to get through this. And hopefully, we will have a more positive 2021. But first, we got to navigate and get through everything else. So, these tips that we're going to talk about, it's not just time related to one particular year. Hopefully, people will look at this and say these are lifelong tips. These are tips you can take with you for years to come. Some of the suggestions and things like that. So, to get us started, is there a particular tip that you really like, Estelle, in the book?
Yeah, the tip that I really love all the tips, and I have more or less practiced them. And when I do practice them, they work. Um, but the tip that I wanted to share with you today, hopefully this kind of
Oh, look at that.
works and it's not, but it's a little grid, and it's from Stephen Covey, my favorite person,
Mm,
Stephen Covey, The Seven
mm,
Habits of Highly Effective People. And what he said is that you can divide everything, taxonomy, you can divide
mm,
everything into things that are important or not important, and things that are urgent or not urgent. And
mm,
what you want to do is spend as much of your life as possible in doing things that are important but are not urgent.
mm,
And those important things are your core relationships. They're the purposeful, meaningful, thriving part of your profession. Um, they are living consistent with your values and taking care of yourself, self care. When you're doing all those, when you're preventatively, proactively attending to your most important relationships, your the meaningful part of your career, taking good care of yourself, and living consistent with your own values, everything's things are just swimming along. But for example, sometimes academics spend all their time at work and therefore don't spend time with their spouse or don't spend time with their kids, and this can create a crisis because something is important, but instead of you dealing proactively with it, you've left it by the side, and all of a sudden your husband leaves you, or your kids just go wild because they've been so neglected. So you've turned it into an emergency, something that's urgent. And the way that you're going to have to interact with it is something that you really, it's reactive. It's on the other side. So you really, in the ideal world, you'll be all in that important um, and not urgent. And, and there are also things that go below the line. That is, they are not important. And we as academics spend way too much time on those things. They can be things that are urgent, but not important to us. So answering email, ping, it comes in your box. You were getting ready to leave, or you were getting ready to do your research or something else. Um, work on something that was important to you, but this email comes in and you feel compelled to answer it instantly. Um, so that is not important. It's not important to me, but it's urgent to someone else. And so you respond to it. And all of the time that you spend dealing with that, you're not dealing with core relationships, the meaningful part of your profession, and taking care of yourself. And the thing which we must avoid at all costs, but we spend way too much time doing it, and we certainly did it in 2020, is things that are not important and they are not urgent. So that is, all the stuff you are doing, doom scrolling, for terrible articles about what's going to come, um, uh, looking at silly videos, or, you know, uh, thinking, which Yvette is going to get to, thinking, negative, non-productive thoughts. And that little quadrant that is neither important nor is it urgent, those are trifling people, trifling thoughts, and trifling activities. And why would you want to be trifling? So you're what you want to be doing is being mindful. Hey, I just stopped doing my own work to answer this email. Or hey, I just spent time, my kids are trying to talk to me, but I'm scrolling, through my newsfeed. Or hey, instead of um, going and exercising today, I just spent the morning answering email. So all of those things, you keep aware of that, and the awareness in and of itself can help you stop doing it. Okay, so that's my tip, and I'd like to hear what Yvette has to say about
Mhm.
her tip.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing it because I've been guilty of that. It's like sometimes you get these emails and you stop working on the important things, and then you spend half of your day responding emails. Sometimes you can get 30, 40 emails, and then like you said, it's urgent to those people that send it. But then that is also interruption to what you have to work on. So I've been guilty of that. Oh, I got to respond to him. I got to respond to that. Got to do that. And then next thing you know, half your day is gone because you spent most of your time responding to all the emails and text messages and phone calls and things like that. So that's a great tip, and that's something I have to work on as well. Well, my tip is in the book is about changing those stressful thoughts. And I like how we use the acronym ANTS, automatic negative thoughts. So those stressful thoughts could be those negative thoughts that we repeat to ourselves over and over again. And the thoughts that come in our mind, and I often think about that because, yeah, there's some people that are negative out there in the world. Um, but a lot of times, and you can address those people, you can shut them off, you can not answer them, you don't have to respond to their calls or the emails. But sometimes we have our own negative thoughts. And how do you get away from yourself? It's a little bit more difficult or challenging when you have those negative thoughts that are often being repeated and you say them over and over to yourself. Um, and it could be based on how people may treat you or what they say to you, but then you start to believe those things. And then it takes a life on itself. Maybe I can't do that job. Maybe I wasn't good at this because they said I wasn't good, or I didn't do that great in my presentation, or the grade that I got on assignment or evaluation or whatever. And then you start to believe those things. And, rather than have somebody say those things, you start to have your own repeated thoughts in your mind over and over again that are negative. So then it is not about other people, it's about yourself. And changing that is going to be so key. So when you think about those repeated thoughts we say to ourselves, think about ants. And ants could be on your body and they're irritating and they're crawling all over. So if you don't want ants crawling all over you, why would you want ants in your mind taking over repeated negative, stressful thoughts? So our book talks about some things you can do to combat those things when you have those repeated thoughts over and over in yourself, and what you can say to yourself. So personally, when I see that happening, and like I said, we internalize it. And sometimes what people say, we are our own worst enemy. Sometimes when you repeat that, and when I personally hear myself starting to doubt myself, or, really coming hard on myself because I didn't do something to my standard the way I would want to do it, rather than be like, oh, that was just bad. And the way you came across was negative, and I try to look at, or you weren't successful in that, I try to look at, okay, but what did I learn? If I start to say that in my mind, that I didn't do this great or it wasn't up to the standard, I try to turn it into something positive. What is a takeaway? What did I learn from that? And oftentimes, I often learn more from my mistakes than the things that went well. So things that went well, I'll be like, okay, that's great, But things that did not go the way I expected, I try to turn in some positive. What did I learn from that? Those are the things I could remember. So maybe I could do it differently next time. And don't be so hard on yourself. We all humans. Nobody's perfect. So, how to take something that did not work great and make it into a learning experience and learn from it. So, that's how I deal with those ants that come up. So, that's one of the reasons why that's one of my favorite tips with that. Uh, well, thank you. So, hopefully, you all will have a chance to go back to the book and we elaborate a lot more on the tips. But those are just a few of our favorite tips on self care. And remember, self care is so important. It is, with self care, is not being selfish, it's about taking care of yourself. And that's never a selfish thing to do. So, thank you all for joining us on this episode of Self Care. I believe in you.
I believe in you.
Bye.